Hey guys, tonight we're heading up into the high country. We're riding into a valley in Colorado, a place carved by glaciers and grit, where the mountains are sharp enough to cut the clouds and the air is thin and clean. It's a land of big money and bigger ambitions, where a man's fortune is measured by the length of his fences and the sharpness of his spurs. It's a beautiful, ruthless place, and if you're not careful, you probably won't survive this ride with your land or your heart intact. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Your quiet support is what keeps these stories riding tall in the saddle. Go on and drop your location and the time where you are in the comments below. It's always good to know who's sharing the campfire with me. Now, dim the lights, maybe. Turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You see it first from a high pass, a valley sprawling below like a kingdom. Green meadows, a river sparkling like a silver ribbon, and mountains rising up on all sides like fortress walls. But this is no paradise for the common man. This is Thorn Valley, and it belongs, for all intents and purposes, to one man, Marcus Thorn. His presence is etched into the very landscape. His fences, made of the finest cedar posts and steel wire, seem to stretch to the horizon, dividing the land into a perfect, merciless grid. You could likely walk from one end of the county to the other without ever leaving Thorn property, provided you were a good climber. His cattle, thousands of them, all bear the same mark seared into their hides, a single sharp T. He is a man of the Gilded Age, one of the great industrialists who came west not with a homesteader's dream, but with a capitalist's ambition. Historians still debate whether men like him were captains of industry who built the West or robber barons who crushed its independent spirit. Standing here, looking at his empire, you can see how they could be both. At the very heart of this empire is the ranch house, a sprawling two-story mansion of stone and dark timber that looks as if it were plucked from the Hudson Valley and dropped into this rugged landscape. And it is inside this house that you first meet her, Elizabeth Thorn, though everyone calls her Ellie. You see her now, standing in the grand parlor, a room filled with heavy mahogany furniture, velvet curtains, and a polished grand piano that has never felt the touch of a musician. She is the land baron's daughter, his only child, his prized possession. She is dressed in a fine silk gown from back east, a dress with more buttons than a general's coat and about as practical. She should be the envy of every woman in the territory. But you can see, in the rigid set of her shoulders and the far-off look in her eyes, that this luxury is a cage. Her gaze is fixed on the window. She isn't looking at the manicured rose garden her mother so painstakingly cultivated. She is looking past it, past the fences and the branded cattle, to the wild, untamed peaks of the mountains beyond. She feels a kinship with the delicate, exotic ferns her mother brought from Boston in a sealed glass Wardian case, a fragile piece of the old world struggling to breathe in this new, harsh air. She is her father's heir, the princess of Thorn Valley. But all she feels is the suffocating weight of the gilded bars, and all she dreams of is the dangerous, exhilarating freedom of the land her father is so determined to tame. You pull your gaze away from the gilded cage of the Thorn mansion and let it drift across the valley. You follow the silver thread of the main creek, the lifeblood of this entire region, as it winds its way south. Past the endless stretches of Thorn's barbed wire, past his thousands of branded cattle, you find a place where the grid of his empire stops abruptly. Here the land has a different feel. It is tamed not by force, but by a partnership. This is the Forester Homestead. It is a single 160-acre plot, claimed and held under the Homestead Act of 1862, a small island of independence. in an ocean of Thorn's ambition. You see, its fences are not the sharp, aggressive lines of steel wire, but are made of split-rail timber, their zigzag pattern following the contours of the land with a rustic, handmade grace. You know that to build such a fence, a man must be almost as tough and hard-headed as the logs he splits. And there is the man himself. You see him now, Cole Forrester, working near his small, sturdy log cabin. The cabin itself probably has fewer rooms than the Thorns' horse stable, but it feels 100 times more like a home. Cole is a man in his early 30s, with the broad shoulders and quiet, steady movements of someone who knows the language of hard work. He is mending a harness, his hands sure and competent. He is a veteran of the Great War back east, a man who came out here not to build an empire, but to escape one. Seeking peace in the soil. His presence here is an act of defiance. Every other small homesteader in this valley has been bought out, squeezed out, or scared out by Marcus Thorn. But Cole remains, not because he is the strongest or the wealthiest, but because of a simple accident of geography. His claim sits at the head of the valley and the creek, the very same creek that waters all of Thorn's vast herds, flows directly through the heart of his land. He controls the water. And in the arid West, the man who controls the water controls everything. You can feel the great debate for the soul of the West playing out in this one small valley. Is its future in the large-scale, corporate ranching of men like Thorn an extension of the industrial capitalism of the East? Or is it in the agrarian ideal of the small, independent farmer like Cole, a man whose only capital is the sweat of his own brow? Thorn has thousands of cattle, dozens of hired hands, and a fortune in the bank. But Cole Forrester has the creek and the unyielding stubbornness of a mule chewing on a thistle. You watch as he finishes his repair. He stands and stretches, his back aching from his labor. His gaze lifts, and he looks north toward the distant, imposing silhouette of the Thorn mansion on the hill. His expression is not one of fear or envy. It is a look of quiet, unshakable resolve. He is the last honest man in the valley, the final stone in Marcus Thorn's shoe. And you know, with a cold certainty, that one way or another, the land baron is coming to remove him. You see Ellie Thorn defy the stifling stillness of her father's house in the only way she knows how. She escapes. Dressed not in silk, but in a practical riding habit, she saddles her own mare, a spirited chestnut, and rides out from the sprawling ranch. She doesn't follow the manicured paths. She heads for the high country, for the wild ridges that mark the edge of her father's influence, seeking a vantage point where the air is thin and her thoughts can be her own. From a ridge overlooking the valley's southern edge, she pulls her horse to a stop. It is from here that you see her witness the quiet, brutal machinery of her father's empire at work. Down below, at the small homestead belonging to the Miller family, a grim scene is unfolding. A wagon is loaded with a pathetic collection of worldly goods, a rocking chair, a few crates, a child's wooden doll lying abandoned in the dust. Standing by are two hard-faced men she recognizes as her father's new foremen, though they carry themselves less like cowboys and more like the Pinkerton agents her father sometimes hired back east. Her father's definition of negotiation, she thinks bitterly, always seems to involve men with guns. You watch Ellie as she realizes what is happening. This is not a friendly departure. It is an eviction. Marcus Thorn, through the bank he controlled, had bought the Millers' debt. Now, under the perfect color of law, he was seizing their land. Legal scholars could debate were aggressive. Business ended and coercion began. But Ellie, watching the Miller family stand defeated beside the last of their possessions, knew she was watching a profound injustice. Mrs. Miller is weeping silently. Her husband stares at the ground, his hands clenched, his pride stripped from him. Just as the Thorn men mount up and ride away, their work done, another rider appears. You see Ellie lean forward in her saddle, her attention fixed. It is Cole, Forrester, riding from his own property just down the creek. He does not ride with aggression. He approaches the devastated family with a quiet, solemn purpose. She is too far away to hear the words, but you and she can see the actions, and they speak louder than any conversation. You see Cole dismount and walk to Mrs. Miller, offering her his own canteen. She takes a long, grateful drink. He then turns to the two small, bewildered children and pulls something from his saddlebag, a piece of jerky for each of them. Finally, he walks to Mr. Miller, the defeated husband, and places a firm, steadying hand on his shoulder, speaking to him not with pity, but with the quiet, shared dignity of a fellow homesteader dot up on the ridge. You see this small act of grace, and it is a revelation for Ellie. It is a single drop of decency in an ocean of her father's cruelty. The contrast is stark and absolute. Her father's men, instruments of a powerful and ruthless machine, leaving devastation in their wake. And this one, solitary man, offering what little he has to comfort the victims. A single sip of water from Cole's canteen, she thinks, holds more true charity than all the champagne her father has ever served. A seed of admiration, powerful and dangerous, takes root in her heart. He is no longer just the stubborn farmer who stands in her father's way. He is a symbol of an honor and integrity she realizes is starving from her own life. You watch as she turns her horse around and rides back toward the cold, grand mansion, her mind no longer just dreaming of escape, but beginning, for the first time, to plot a rebellion. You see the shame and anger from the eviction festering in Ellie for days. The gilded cage of the Thorn mansion now feels less like a home and more like the headquarters of a conquering army, and she, a reluctant conscript. One afternoon, the feeling becomes unbearable. She needs to escape, to feel the wind, to outrun the suffocating sense of her own name. She saddles her spirited chestnut mare, ignoring the groomsman's offer of a gentler mount, and rides out hard and fast. This is not a gentle canter. It is a reckless, furious gallop. She pushes the mare into the untamed foothills, a place of rocky arroyos and treacherous game trails, a landscape as wild and restless as her own heart. She is riding astride, having long ago abandoned the restrictive, ladylike side saddle her mother insisted upon, another small secret rebellion. But her skill is not yet equal to her fiery dot as she navigates a steep, shale-covered slope. A jackrabbit darts from a bush. The mare, already on edge, shies violently. Ellie, caught off guard, loses her seat. You see the sickening moment of separation, a blur of flying limbs and tangled reins. She lands hard in the scrub and loose rock, her head striking the ground with a dull thud. Dazed and gasping for breath, she looks up just in time to see her mare, eyes wide with panic, bolt and disappear over the ridge. She is alone, miles from home, with a sharp, searing pain in her ankle. She tries to stand, but the pain is too great. A wave of dizziness and despair washes over her. It is in this moment of absolute vulnerability that you see a figure appear on the ridge above her. It is Cole Forrester. He was not following her. He was checking the northern line of his property, a picket pin and hammer in hand, and saw the riderless horse. He makes his way down the slope with a sure-footed ease that seems to defy gravity. He approaches her not with alarm, but with a calm, assessing gaze. "Stay still," he says, his voice a low, steady baritone. It is the first time she has heard him speak more than a single word. He kneels beside her, his presence radiating a quiet competence. "Where does it hurt?" "I'm fine," she says through gritted teeth, a response of pure, prideful instinct. "Yes, ma'am," he replies, his voice utterly deadpan as his eyes travel to her obviously twisted ankle. Your ankle just told me so itself. He gently probes the joint with his fingers, his touch surprisingly careful. It's a bad sprain, but not a break. You're lucky. Lucky, she thinks, is not the word she would choose. He stands. Can you ride? My horse is gone, she states, the helplessness of her situation finally crashing down on her. I noticed, he says. But mine isn't. He gives a low whistle, and his sturdy buckskin gelding, which had been waiting patiently above, makes its way down to them. He helps her to her feet, her arm draped over his broad shoulders, and you can see her flinch at the unexpected solid strength of him. He lifts her easily onto his own saddle. The journey back is a slow walking pace affair, filled with a tense, charged silence. He leads the horse, his hand steady on the bridle, his gaze fixed on the trail. She is acutely aware of him, the quiet strength of his presence, the scent of pine and clean sweat. He is the land her father wants to conquer, made flesh, and he is the one who saved her. He stops at the edge of her father's property line, well out of sight of the main house. He helps her down, and for a moment they stand facing each other. Thank you, she says, the words feeling small and inadequate. He simply touches the brim of his worn hat. Watch yourself on these hills, Miss Thorne, he says. They don't care who your father is. And with that, he turns and melts back into the landscape, leaving her alone with her throbbing ankle and a heart that is beating for an entirely new and dangerous reason. You see Ellie's riderless horse return to the Thorne stables, its sides lathered, its eyes wild with panic. The story of the fall and of the rescue spreads through the ranch hands and up to the great house in a matter of hours. When Marcus Thorne hears that his daughter was found in the arms of Cole Forrester, his reaction is not one of gratitude. It is a quiet, calculated fury. To him, this was not a rescue. It was an incursion. The homesteader had not just touched his daughter. He had trespassed upon his property. Confined to her room with a throbbing, tightly bandaged ankle, Ellie is a prisoner once more. From her window, she sees the result of her brief, reckless flight for freedom. She watches her father issue a series of cold, precise orders to his foreman. A wagon is loaded with tools, shovels, axes, saws. A crew of a dozen hard-faced men mounts up and rides out, not south toward the miller's abandoned plot, but north, up the valley, following the creek. Ellie's heart freezes. She knows exactly what is about to happen. Miles downstream, you see Cole Forrester notice the change. He is leading his two horses to the creek for their evening drink when he sees that the water level is unnaturally low. The familiar, cheerful gurgle of the current has been replaced by a sluggish, muddy silence. He walks upstream, following the bed of his dying creek, a knot of cold dread tightening in his stomach, that this is the very heart of the conflict over water in the West. The legal doctrine of the territory is prior appropriation. He who uses the water first holds the right to it. Cole's claim is older. The water is his by law. But Marcus Thorne adheres to a simpler, more brutal law, the law of power. He owns the land upstream, and therefore he believes he owns the water that flows through it. That you see what Thorne's men have built. It is not a proper dam, but a crude, brutal act of spite. They have felled several large pine trees and dragged them across the narrowest point of the creek on Thorne's land. They have packed the gaps with rocks, mud, and earth, creating a temporary but devastatingly effective blockage. The water that was once the lifeblood of the valley now pools uselessly behind the barrier, a private lake from Marcus Thorne. Back at his homestead, Cole stands on the bank of what was once a living creek. It is now nothing more than a series of stagnant, muddy puddles. The sound of running water, the constant, gentle music of his small ranch, has been silenced. Thorne has not sent men with guns. He has not filed a lawsuit. He has done something far more devastating. He has choked the life from Cole's land. Without water, his cattle will die within a week. His small crop of hay will wither. His claim, his 5 years of back-breaking work under the Homestead Act, will be rendered worthless. From her window in the mansion, Ellie looks out at the darkening valley. She knows what her father has done. Her one desperate ride for freedom has brought utter ruin to the one man in this valley she has come to admire. The weight of that guilt is a heavier burden than any cage her father could ever build. You see the days that follow the damming of the creek become a slow, quiet torture for everyone. Cole Forrester's land, visible from the high windows of the Thorne mansion, begins to show the first signs of thirst. The vibrant green of his hay meadow fades to a sickly yellow. And for Ellie, trapped in the house with her healing ankle, every moment is a fresh wave of guilt. She is a prisoner, and the price of her failed escape is being paid by the one man in the valley who showed her kindness. It is into this tense, simmering quiet that Marcus Thorne makes his next move. Believing he has all but broken the homesteader, he turns his attention back to the matter of his dynasty. He informs Ellie that they will have a guest for dinner. Not a neighboring rancher, but a gentleman of importance from Denver. You watch as a fancy, enclosed carriage, utterly unsuited for the rugged roads, pulls up to the mansion. Out steps Sterling Blackwood. He is the physical embodiment of the Gilded Age fortune that powers her father's ambition. He is dressed in an immaculate tweed suit, a silk cravat at his throat, his city boots polished to a mirror shine. He looks as out of place as a peacock in a chicken coop. His hands, you see Ellie notice immediately, are pale and soft, the hands of a man who has never known a day of physical labor. The dinner that evening is an excruciating affair. You see Ellie forced into a restrictive corset and a fine silk dress, sitting silently as her father and Sterling Blackwood discuss the future of the West. Their conversation is one of railroads, mining interests, and capital. They speak of the land not as a home, but as a commodity. They are believers in the ruthless philosophy of social Darwinism, the idea that the strong, like them, are destined to devour the weak, like the homesteaders. Sterling, attempting to show an interest in the ranching business, makes a comment about the romance of the open range, revealing an ignorance so profound it is almost comical. You can see the thought flash through Ellie's mind. Cole Forrester's horse knows more about ranching than this man will ever learn. The whole ritual of the formal Victorian dinner, with its endless array of specific forks and spoons, feels utterly absurd. You realize there are fewer rules for surviving a blizzard than for eating soup in the Thorne dining room. The purpose of the visit becomes brutally clear over dessert. Sterling's family and ours have been in business together for many years. Marcus Thorne announces, looking directly at his daughter. We have agreed that a more permanent union would be beneficial to us all. You and he will be married in the spring. The words land with the force of a physical blow. This is not a proposal. It is a business merger, and she is the asset being traded. She looks at Sterling Blackwood's soft, empty hands and his self-satisfied smirk. She thinks of Cole Forrester's strong, calloused hands and his quiet, honorable defiance. The choice being forced upon her is not just between two men. It is between two worlds. You see her trapped, her back against the wall, her future being signed away like a deed. The guilt over Cole's ruin and the horror of her own impending fate merge into a single, cold, and desperate resolve. Her father thinks he has finally cornered her, but you can see in the sudden dangerous fire in her eyes that he has not. He has just given her a reason to finally fight back. You see the decision take root in Ellie during the long, sleepless night that follows her father's decree. She is no longer a restless girl dreaming of escape. She has become a woman plotting a war. Her father has left her with no choices, so she must invent her own. Feminist historians can debate whether marriage in the West was a romantic union or a strategic contract. But in the early hours of the morning, Ellie Thorne decides it will be her weapon. Before the first hint of dawn, she rises. Her sprained ankle is still a dull throb, a painful reminder of the event that set this all in motion, but she ignores it. She dresses not in her riding habit, but in a simple, sturdy traveling dress. This is not a flight of fancy. It is a business trip. You watch as she slips out of the silent, sleeping mansion and makes her way to the stables. This is the second time she has run away, but this time you realize she is running toward a fire, not away from it. She rides under the cover of the pre-dawn gloom, her path illuminated by a sliver of a waning moon. She doesn't head for the wild hills, but follows the dying creek bed downstream, a path of devastation that strengthens her resolve. She arrives at Cole Forrester's homestead, just as the sky is beginning to soften from black to a deep, bruised purple. You see him standing by his corral, his shoulders slumped, staring at the dry, cracked earth that was once the heart of his land. He looks up, his body instantly tensing as he sees a rider approach. He is shocked to see it is her, the land baron's daughter, riding onto his property alone at this hour. She dismounts before he can speak, her movements stiff but determined. She does not offer a greeting. She gets straight to the point, her voice low and steady, burning with a cold, desperate fire. "Mr. Forrester," she says, "my father intends to see you ruined, and he intends to marry me to a man I will not have." You watch Cole's face, his initial shock hardening into a wary, suspicious scowl. He thinks this is some kind of trick. "I have a proposition for you," she continues, ignoring his distrust. "It is a business arrangement, a contract." She takes a breath and lays her mad, brilliant plan bare. "We get married. In name only. As my husband, my dowry becomes part of this homestead. My name, the Thorne name, would shield you. My father is ruthless, but he is obsessed with the appearance of propriety among his wealthy partners back east. He cannot be seen to be actively destroying his own son-in-law without causing a scandal that would threaten his other business arrangements. He would have to release the water." Cole just stares at her, his expression so stunned he looks like he's been struck by lightning. Ellie has a fleeting thought that perhaps she should have started with good morning. "In return," she says, pressing her advantage, "I gain my freedom from the marriage my father has arranged. We would remain married on paper only long enough to secure your land rights. After that, we have it annulled. You keep your ranch. I keep my freedom." You can see the storm of thoughts in Cole's mind, the sheer audacity of the plan, the insanity of it, the terrifying, undeniable logic. He looks at his dying fields. He looks at this fierce, proud, and desperate woman standing before him, offering him the most improper and most ingenious proposal he has ever imagined. He has been fighting a one-man war against an empire and facing certain defeat. She has just handed him a single, unbelievable, and incredibly dangerous new weapon. Herself. You watch Cole Forrester, a man who has stood his ground against nature and the encroaching power of a wealthy baron, rendered completely speechless by the sheer audacity of Ellie's proposal. He looks from her fierce, determined face to his own dying land, the silence stretching out between them, thick and heavy. He always knew he would have to face Marcus Thorne, but he figured it would be with a rifle in his hands, not a marriage license. This is a different kind of war, a battle of ink and law, and he can see the terrifying, brilliant logic in her strategy. "All right, Miss Thorne," he says finally, his voice a low, gravelly rumble of assent. "You have yourself a deal." They ride to the small, dusty town of Redemption, the county seat, before the sun is even fully up. The journey is a strange, silent affair. They are not lovers riding to elope. They are co-conspirators on their way to sign a treaty, two soldiers from opposing armies forming a desperate alliance against the common king. The lawyer's office is a cramped, dusty room above the mercantile, smelling of old paper and stale tobacco. Attorney Gable is a weary man in his 60s, with ink-stained fingers and eyes that have seen every kind of human folly. When Ellie Thorne, the daughter of the wealthiest man in the territory, walks in with Cole Forrester, the one man her father is actively trying to crush, and asks for a marriage license, he simply stares at them over the top of his spectacles. "Well," he says, after a long silence, "this is certainly one of the more creative water rights negotiations I've ever witnessed, but he is a man of the law." He draws up the documents. Ellie, with a clarity that surprises both Cole and the lawyer, dictates the terms of a separate agreement. It outlines the marriage as a partnership, her dowry to be invested directly into the land and livestock of the Forrester homestead, making them joint proprietors. She is not just seeking a shield. She is forging a sword. The scratching of the steel-nibbed pen is the only sound in the room as they sign their names, side by side, on the official county ledger. You see Cole's large, calloused hand next to her. Smaller, more elegant one. He signs with a grim resolve. She signs with a steady, unwavering stroke. The lawyer takes out a curved wooden blotter and presses it firmly onto their signatures. A simple, final act that makes the impossible irreversible. A few moments later, the justice of the peace, summoned from next door, pronounces them husband and wife. The words are dry and legal, utterly devoid of romance. There is no ring, no kiss. They look at each other, not as newlyweds, but as partners who have just pushed all their chips to the center of the table. Most brides get a wedding cake, Ellie thinks. She is getting a range war. They walk out of the dusty office and into the harsh morning sun, legally bound together. They are strangers, now husband and wife, united by a shared enemy and a desperate contract. The first shot in their rebellion has been fired, and you can almost feel the entire valley holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable thunderous response from Marcus Thorne. You see Cole and Ellie ride back from town, a signed marriage license tucked securely in Cole's saddlebag. They are husband and wife, yet they ride in a near-total silence, the enormity of their gamble settling upon them. They are no longer two individuals. They are a single, fragile entity, a new and unproven alliance against the most powerful man in the valley. They arrive at Cole's small, quiet homestead, a place that is now, legally, her home too. The news of their union travels faster than a telegraph. Mr. Gable, the lawyer, understanding the gravity of the situation, sends a boy with a formal notarized copy of the marriage certificate directly to the Thorne mansion. It is a declaration of legal fact, a shot fired across the bow of Marcus Thorne's empire. You are there in the grand, silent study of the Thorne mansion when the message arrives. Marcus Thorne is sitting at his massive oak desk, a map of the valley spread before him. He takes the envelope from his foreman, his expression one of mild annoyance at the interruption. He breaks the seal and reads the document, and you see nothing. For a full minute, he does not move a muscle. His face, which is usually a mask of stern control, becomes something else entirely, a void. The anger is so profound, so absolute, that it has burned past red-hot rage and settled into a glacial, terrifying calm. A fly buzzing near the window sounds as loud as a gunshot in the sudden, heavy silence. Political scientists can debate the difference between legitimate authority and raw power. And in this moment, you see a man who has just been defied in his authority, preparing to unleash his power. He slowly places the document on his desk. He looks at the small, elegant calling card left by Sterling Blackwood, the suitor he had chosen for his daughter, a symbol of the dynastic merger he had so carefully planned. With a single deliberate motion, he picks up the card and rips it cleanly in two, dropping the pieces into a wastebasket. "Get me a telegraph line to Denver," he says, his voice soft, almost a whisper, which is more frightening than any shout. "I need to speak with my lawyer." The reply from the city lawyer, arriving an hour later, only confirms what he already suspects. The marriage is legal. Ellie was of age. There was no coercion. Her dowry is now legally tied to the Forrester. Land. Any overt legal move against Cole Forrester is now a move against his own daughter, a public airing of dirty laundry that would be ruinous to his reputation among the financiers and politicians back east. His legal avenues have been cut off. You watch as Marcus Thorne stands and walks to the window, looking down the valley toward the small, insignificant homestead that has now become the heart of the rebellion. His face is a mask of cold fury. His daughter has made her choice. She has chosen the dirt-sodden life of a homesteader over the empire he built for her. She has made her bed, he says to the empty room. Now she will lie in it. He turns to his foreman, who has been waiting in silent terror. The dam stays, and pray for an early winter. A contract won't keep. Them warm. The declaration is made. The war is no longer about lawsuits and foreclosures. It is now a battle of attrition, a quiet, ruthless siege. He will not attack them with guns, not yet. He will let the land, the wind, and the cold do the work for him. You watch as the new, strange life of Mr. and Mrs. Forrester begins, a life lived under one simple, solitary roof. For Ellie, stepping into Cole's small, sturdy log cabin is like stepping into another world. The oppressive luxury of her father's mansion is gone, replaced by the scent of wood smoke, leather, and brewing coffee. The furniture is handmade and functional. The floors are rough-hewn pine, and the only decoration is the quiet, utilitarian beauty of a well-kept rifle hanging over the stone hearth. Their first days together are a dance of awkward, unspoken rules. This is a marriage of strategy, not affection, and the forced proximity in the small, one-room cabin is a constant, palpable tension. You see him, a man accustomed to his own solitary rhythm, trying to navigate the presence of this refined woman. In his space, he gives her the cabin's only proper bed without a word, taking a simple bedroll for himself by the fire. He has faced down cannon fire in the war, but you suspect nothing has been as unnerving as sharing a home with his new, entirely unpredictable wife. For her part, Ellie is determined to uphold her end of the bargain. She is no longer a lady of leisure. She is a homesteader's wife, as she throws herself into the role with a fierce, if clumsy, resolve. You see her struggle to cook on the fickle cast-iron stove, her first batch of biscuits burnt to black charcoal briquettes. You see Cole, in a gesture of unexpected kindness, eat one without flinching and declare it has a sturdy flavor. You see her learn the difficult, smelly chore of making lye soap from wood ash and tallow, a task that marks her final, definitive break from her old life. And as they work, they watch each other. He watches her, his initial suspicion slowly melting into a grudging respect. He sees her determination, the way she refuses to complain about the hard work or the Spartan conditions. He sees the steel beneath the silk. She watches him, her initial admiration deepening into something more profound. She sees the relentless, quiet way he works to save his ranch, hauling water by the bucketful from his well to keep his small herd alive. She sees his gentleness with his animals, his unwavering integrity. The tension of their arrangement begins to change. The awkwardness of being strangers is slowly replaced by the electric, unspoken tension of a man and a woman. You see it in the small moments, their hands brushing as he takes a plate from her, A shared, lingering glance across the supper table. The way her heart flutters when she sees the firelight catch the lines of his face. Sociologists can talk about propinquity theory, the idea that love grows simply from being near someone, and in this small cabin, you are watching that theory being proven not, but outside, the creek bed remains dry. The pressure from her father is a constant, silent presence. They are two people in a besieged fortress, their strange business arrangement becoming complicated by a fragile, budding, and incredibly dangerous attraction. You watch as the seasons begin to turn in the high valley. The first chill of autumn touches the night air, and the aspens on the high slopes begin to shimmer with gold. On the Forrester homestead, an unspoken truce has given way to a fragile, budding affection. The marriage that began as a contract is slowly, quietly, becoming something real. But the creek remains dry, and the shadow of Marcus Thorne's cold fury looms over them, a promise of a hard winter to come. The attack comes on a moonless, starless night. You see Cole and Ellie inside their small cabin, the supper dishes cleared. A comfortable silence between them. It is then that Cole goes still. His head lifts, his senses, honed by the war and the wilderness, detecting something wrong. A strange, acrid smell on the wind. The nervous, frantic whinnying of the horses in the barn. He moves to the window, and you see his body go rigid. "Get the rifle," he says, his voice a low, dangerous command. Ellie looks out and sees it too. A hungry orange flicker dancing in the darkness. A demonic light against the black silhouette of their barn. As they watch, the flicker blossoms into a roar. A sheet of flame erupts from the hayloft, engulfing the dry timber of the roof in a whoosh of incandescent destruction. The barn is on fire. This is not a stray spark or an act of nature. This is an escalation. This is her father's answer to their defiance. You see the chaos explode. Cole bursts from the cabin, grabbing an axe and a bucket, his face a mask of grim fury. His only thought is for the animals trapped inside. "Stay back." He yells to Ellie, but she does not listen. The delicate, sheltered daughter of the land baron is gone, burned away in the fiery light. In her place is a homesteader, a wife, fighting for her home. The heat is a physical blow, the roar of the fire a deafening monster. You watch Cole, a single, desperate man against an inferno, as he smashes the corral gate, driving the terrified cattle out into the pasture, away from the spreading flames. Ellie works the hand pump with a frantic, desperate strength she never knew she possessed, filling bucket after bucket. This is the reality of a prairie fire, a force of total, swift annihilation. Her father's grand mansion in Denver, surely, has a polished brass fire mark, a promise of protection from a private brigade. Here, their only insurance is a single well, and their own two hands dot as Cole fights to free the last of the terrified horses. He sees them, two riders on a distant ridge, their forms silhouetted against the terrible, beautiful light of the burning barn. They are Thorne's men. They watch for a moment, their work completed, and then melt back into the darkness. They cannot save the barn. It is a total loss. You watch as they finally retreat from the heat, their faces black with soot, their lungs burning. They stand together in the flickering, hellish light, and watch as the structure that held their winter hay, their tools, their hopes for survival, collapses into a mountain of roaring embers. The Cold War is over. The fragile piece of their new life has been shattered. And you know that this fire is not an ending. It is the beginning of the final, desperate battle for the valley. You see Cole and Ellie standing in the terrible, flickering glow of their burning barn, the heat on their faces, the smell of ash in their lungs. For a moment, you see utter despair. In Cole's eyes, this was not a natural disaster. It was a message, a final, brutal move to wipe him off the board. He sees his dream, his 5 years of relentless toil, turning to smoke. But as you watch Ellie, you see a different reaction. The fire is not melting her. It is forging her. The last of the frightened, sheltered girl is burned away, leaving behind a woman of cold, hard, tempered steel. She looks at Cole's devastated face, and a quiet, dangerous resolve settles upon her. "It's not over," she says, her voice cutting through the roar of the fire. "Stay here. Put out what you can." Before he can protest, she turns and runs to the horse he managed to save, swinging herself onto its bare back with a raw, desperate grace. "Father always wanted me to take an interest in the family business." You hear her think with grim irony. "I suppose this counts." She wheels the horse around and gallops into the night, riding not away from the fire, but toward the bigger, colder darkness of the Thorne mansion. You see her arrive, a wild, soot-stained figure bursting into the grand, silent house. She finds her father in his study, just as she knew she would. He is sitting in a high-backed leather chair before a low fire, a glass of brandy in his hand, looking as calm as a man who has just ordered a barn burning and is waiting for the embers to cool. He looks up at her, his expression one of cold, cruel disappointment. "I assume," he says, his voice dripping with condescension, "you have come to your senses and are ready to admit your foolish mistake." "I have," Ellie says, her voice shaking with a rage so profound it has become calm. "My mistake was believing you had any honor left." She walks directly to his massive oak desk, the one piece of furniture that is the very heart of his empire. She ignores his furious command to stop. She runs her hand along the carved underside until she feels a small, hidden latch. She presses. Its secret compartment, a detail she discovered as a curious child years ago, springs open. From it, she pulls a slim, leather-bound ledger. "You burned our barn," she says, placing the ledger on the desk between them. "You destroyed our winter hay, our tools. You tried to ruin us." "I have no idea what you're talking about," he sneers. "This ledger does," she replies, flipping it open to a well-remembered page. "It tells the story of your first big success. A story of forged survey documents from the General Land Office. A story of a bribe paid to a federal agent to sign off on a claim for this entire valley. The claim that was the foundation of everything." She looks up at him, her eyes blazing. "None of this is legally yours." The blood drains from Marcus Thorne's face. He is speechless. "Here is what you will do," Ellie says, her voice the quiet, sharp sound of shattering glass. "You will open the dam tomorrow morning. You will have your lawyer draw up a deed granting Cole Forrester permanent and indisputable rights to the full flow of the creek. And then you will leave us alone. If you do not, this ledger and a full account of your crimes go to the U.S. Marshals in Denver." You watch as the great Marcus Thorne, the robber baron, the captain of industry, the king of this valley, is brought to his knees. He has been defeated, not by a rival with more money or a gunslinger with a faster draw, but by his own daughter, armed with nothing but his own dark secret. You see Marcus Thorne, a man made of iron and ambition, simply deflate. The ledger lies open on the desk between him and his daughter, an undeniable testament to the rotten foundation upon which his entire empire was built. He looks at Ellie, at her soot-stained face and her blazing eyes, and for the first time, he does not see a disobedient child. He sees the woman she has become, and he sees his own defeat reflected in her unyielding gaze. He gives a single, sharp, almost imperceptible nod. It is the silent, unconditional surrender of a king. Ellie takes the ledger, her one and only weapon, and walks out of the study without a backward glance, leaving her father alone with the ashes of his authority. The next morning, you are with Cole Forrester. He stands in the pre-dawn chill, surveying the smoldering, skeletal ruins of his barn. All is lost. He is a man at the very edge of ruin, his back broken. It is then that he hears it. A sound so unfamiliar he at first thinks he is imagining it. A low, wet, gurgling sound. He runs to the edge of his property, to the dry, cracked creek bed that has been silent for weeks, and he sees life returning. A small, dark trickle of water at first, then a steady flow, then a joyous, gushing rush as the full, liberated force of the creek is released from Thorn's dam. The water pours over the dry stones, soaking into the thirsty earth the sound. Of its return, a symphony of hope. You watch as Cole falls to his knees, plunging his hands into the cold, clear water, a single, difficult tear tracing a path through the soot on his cheek. Later that day, a nervous-looking clerk from Attorney Gable's office rides up to the tool. Homestead. He carries a thick official document, its corner impressed with the raised, waxy seal of the county notary. It is a new deed, signed by Marcus Thorne, granting Cole Forrester and his wife, Elizabeth Thorne Forrester, permanent and primary rights to the full flow of the creek, a right guaranteed by the same laws of preemption Thorne had once twisted to his own purpose. The legal war is over, and then you see the final act. The great, fancy carriage is brought to the front of the Thorne mansion. Trunks are loaded. Marcus Thorne, a man who cannot bear to live in a valley he no longer rules, is retreating. He is leaving the frontier, returning to his world of stocks and railroads in the east. You see Ellie watch his carriage disappear down the valley road, a distant, lonely speck of dust. The reign of the land baron is over. The legitimacy of his power, which was always based on a lie, has been shattered, and now the authority returns to the people of the valley. Cole and Ellie are not just a married couple who survived. They are the quiet heroes who have set the entire valley free. In the quiet, clear days that follow her father's departure, you see a new rhythm establish itself on the Forrester homestead. The oppressive weight of the siege has been lifted. Neighbors, the very families who were driven out, have begun to return to the valley, stopping by to offer their thanks and a helping hand. They speak of a community barn raising, a testament to the new spirit of cooperation that you and Cole have fostered. But amidst this budding hope, a single unspoken question hangs in the air between you and your husband, the question of your contract. One evening, you are standing with Cole before the blackened skeletal ruins of the barn. The sun is setting, casting a soft, melancholy light on the scene of their greatest loss and greatest victory. It is Ellie who finally breaks the silence. The bargain is fulfilled, she says, her voice quiet but clear. He is gone. The water is yours. I am free. She says the word free as if it tastes like ash. We should speak to Attorney Gable about the annulment. It was, after all, our agreement. She says this because her honor demands it, but you can see the profound sadness in her eyes. She never had a traditional hope chest, but she realizes now she would rather have a future here, amidst these ashes, than all the freedom and fine linens in the world. You watch Cole. He does not look at her. He looks at the ruins of his barn, the physical manifestation of his life's work. I've been thinking about that bargain, he says, his voice a low rumble. The contract we signed, it saved my land. It saved my body from a fight I couldn't win, but it didn't save me. He finally turns to face her, his eyes filled with a raw, vulnerable emotion she has never seen before. I was a man half dead. Ellie, living in the past, hiding from the world. You woke me up. You showed me what it was to fight for something again. Not just for land, but for a person, for a partner. He takes a step closer. I don't want to annul our contract. I want to make it real. The man who signed that paper in town was a stranger making a business deal. The man standing here now, he's a husband, and he's in love with his wife. The confession hangs in the cool evening air, simple, honest, and powerful. You see the tears well in Ellie's eyes, tears not of sorrow, but of a joy so profound. It hurts. "I love you, Cole," she whispers. "I think I have from the moment I saw you give that family water from your canteen." Psychologists can debate the nature of love, whether a pragmatic arrangement can ever become a true romance. But here, in the ashes, you see the proof. Theirs was a partnership forged in crisis, built on mutual respect, and it has now, finally, been claimed by love. He closes the distance between them and kisses her. It is not the desperate, urgent kiss of a new romance, but the deep, certain kiss of two people who have been through a war together and have chosen to build a life in the peace that follows. This is their real vow, a promise made not in a dusty office, but in the heart of their home, a vow to rebuild together. You see the Forrester homestead the following spring, and it is a place transformed. The hard winter they feared was met not with scarcity, but with the strength of a renewed community. Where the blackened skeleton of the old barn once stood, a new, larger structure now stands, its fresh-cut pine timbers a testament to the neighbors who came together for a barn raising, a celebration of their collective freedom from Thorn's shadow. The small cabin now has a proper porch, and the fields, now properly irrigated by the full and happy creek, are lush with new growth. Life has returned to this small corner of the valley dot. It is on a bright, clear afternoon that you see the final act of their beginning. Cole and Ellie are not rebuilding what was lost, but planting something entirely new. In a small, protected meadow near the cabin, they are planting an orchard. They are planting the future. You watch them work together, their movements a symphony of easy, practiced partnership. He digs the holes in the rich, dark earth. She follows behind, carefully placing the young, grafted apple saplings into the ground, their roots tender and full of promise. This is not the grand, conquering ambition of Marcus Thorne. This is the slow, patient, and hopeful work of cultivation. Like a small-scale Johnny Appleseed, they are bringing a new kind of sweetness to the valley. You see Ellie, her face browned by the sun, her hands now calloused from work, and you see a woman who has found a freedom more real than any she ever dreamed of in her gilded cage. You see Cole, the grim, solitary warrior, now with a constant, easy smile on his face, a man who has finally found the peace he fought a war for. They plant the last tree as the sun begins to dip low, casting long, warm shadows across their land. They stand together, looking at the small, hopeful row of saplings. They are planting a legacy, putting down roots in the valley they fought for and won. This is no longer a marriage of convenience. It is a partnership in every sense of the word. A love that was tested by fire and found to be true. The land baron's daughter and the stubborn homesteader have become simply a family dot, and so the story of the bargain comes to a close. A contract signed in desperation became a vow spoken in love. A fight for water and land became a partnership for life. And a cold, empty valley, once ruled by a single man's greed, was transformed into a community by the courage of two. The great, epic struggles are over now. The gunsmoke has cleared, the fires have died, and the angry words have faded. All that is left is the quiet, satisfying work of building a home, and the gentle, enduring rhythm of a love that has found its place. Let that peace be your own now. Let the promise of the orchard and the warmth of the setting sun settle your mind. The story is over. All is well.